we used to have to call up 1-800-WX brief. It's the same service that aeroplanes and hot air balloons, and we'd call them up, tell them roughly where we were going to be paragliding, and they would give us wind strength and degrees at various altitudes. But as the years have come by and the internet's kind of blown up, you know, we've got all these really incredible, services like XE Skies. We've got the MM5. There's SkySight now, which is also becoming very popular. So that's just a bit of background while Andrey's getting his gear ready. So one thing that I have found from my experience flying a lot and looking at a forecast and then going out and correlating it with my flying experience is that I feel that people that look at too many weather forecasts get confused. So I would recommend you guys finding a weather forecast that you like the format of, that's easy for you to understand, and just focus on one forecast and maybe not even look at multiple different forecasting models. There used to be a pilot at Tiger, Conrad Craik, who used to be a very good pilot, and there'd be days where he would psych himself out from even going up the hill because the models were conflicting and one of them didn't look good and one of them did. And so I would recommend finding something that works for you, and then, you know, correlate what you see with what you experience, and then you'll kind of build up a relationship. It's kind of like having lots of girlfriends, right? You know, if you start, you know, cheating around on one girlfriend, you know, the other one's going to start lying to you. I don't know if that's a good analogy, but that's kind of the way I see it. I've seen it over the years play out with various pilots. They get confused because there's just, you know, too much information out there. So I'll let Andrey, now that he's back, start with whatever you've got prepared, and I'll jump in where I've got some information to add.
Thanks, Matty. Okay, so I'm going to assume that I have a very few slides, like maybe 2 or 3 pictures. I want to run through the 2 models they use all the time and like my general process of how I approach looking at Tiger forecast, specifically addressing like why we shouldn't fly in any kind of east winds here and why it is important to look at not just what's happening at the ground level or the launch level, but what's actually happening right above your head as well, especially in Tiger, especially on the east days. And then how does it relate in general to how the season progresses here and what you can expect from weather at Tiger? I don't know everybody here, but I'm assuming there's a whole bunch of new-ish pilots, P2s, P3s. They're just kind of starting flying, maybe? Yes? Yeah, I see some hands raised. So we'll I went through a process of explaining this to a whole bunch of new pilots over a number of years. So I'm just kind of trying to summarize all of this, and hopefully we'll get to a point where we understand stuff and we can ask questions. And Matty would know a lot more about actual weather and things around here as well. All right, let me see how do I share screens. I can't share screens. Uh-oh, Steve.
Have you used Zoom before, Andrey, to share screen? There should be a button, the green button on the very bottom.
Okay, yeah. So let's go. We're gonna go with screen 1. Steve's gonna see himself. Okay, Steve's not gonna see himself. All right, I started doing a little bit of a file here. I looked at actually the links on Northwest Paragliding Club, and half of the links are dead. So as far as the models, the only 2 models they actually used, there's only one model they use. I only look at MM5, specifically for at Sammamish MM5. That gives you an entirety of the picture throughout all layers that you really should care about in any given day. And I know most pilots in the beginning just kind of start looking from Tiger Wingram perspective and just purely from a surface forecast. So I'll try and explain, start with Tiger Wingram. We'll look at some details on Tiger Wingram and then switch to MM5 and see how that is better and complements how the 2 models should work together. So I do have Tiger Wingrams for well, today and runs out to Thursday, pulled up on the screen, right? So everybody kind of looks at it already. Everybody understands what it is. You know, wherever the paragliders are, that's where you kind of would expect to be able to make it to. Of course, today we probably won't be able to make it anywhere, and it has a like the time scale goes from left to right throughout the day. You should be paying attention to not where just the paragliders are, but what's actually happening with the wind layers. That's where the paragliders are. It's kind of hard to see them here, but what you should see is that there is actually a lot of east wind pushing through majority of the day, and there is a lot of north wind cranking on top, which at some point in the day makes it all the way to the bottom. It's like 3 o'clock. So just ignore the paragliders for now. That should tell you that tomorrow is not going to be an awesome day to fly a Tiger. You scroll down for Thursday, you kind of see more or less the same thing, where you have a little bit of wind still going slightly eastish. You have a freezing layer pretty much right at the ground level, so it's going to be freaking really cold, and nobody's getting above 1,700 feet. So in my opinion, like at my point, I'm like, I'm not going to even try and go to Tiger, because I'm just going to get everything frozen off, and I'm probably going to eat a lot of collapses while I'm there. But that just gives you 2 days. So everybody's got video turned off, but how many of you guys actually use MM5 or know how MM5 works?
Can we talk the difference between the Tiger map and the Tiger LZ map?
Not really. Not really. We shouldn't. You should not, if you kind of understand that you fly in roughly the same packet of air, especially Tiger and Tiger LZ, there's only 1,000-foot difference, 1,500-foot difference. And the LZ is kind of sandwich, if you look in north to south, is sandwiched between 2 mountains, and the majority prevailing direction is going to be going north to south through that corridor. So it really doesn't matter if your LZ forecast says something. Your forecast at the launch level is going to be more accurate as far as there's going to be less ground shadow. So you're going to have more of a truer directional for the speed and for the directional of the wind. But by the time a bit of a model is trying to calculate wind in a narrow constricted area. So if you look at the top of the Tiger and it's cronking like 15 miles an hour at launch, going weird sideways, it might be better by the time you get to Tiger LZ, but why would you launch that way, right? It's never going to be in reverse. You're never going to have like 0 kilometers an hour wind at Tiger launch and like 15 miles an hour at Tiger LZ. That's never going to happen. Wind shadow gradient, it reduces towards the ground, right? So MM5. So MM5 looks always kind of weird especially to new people, but as long as you, how's my sharing? It looks okay? Great, okay. So as long as you kind of understand that this is just layers of air going up, and it's a snapshot in time of what essentially the moisture is doing in through all those layers of air, and how the temperature is changing through all those layers of air.
Well,
right? And
hey, Andrey, would you just like say like what are the numbers on the sides and what, just take us to from the very basic on this.
So the numbers on the bottom here are the temperature. So it's in centigrade, so works pretty well. The numbers on the left-hand side, that's your barometric pressure going up through the layers of atmosphere. You don't have to need to know to convert what they are. They do provide a super nifty table on the bottom that actually relates that pressure and converts it and gives you all the stats for different layers of air. Roughly, if you think about it, 1,000 at Tiger everywhere. 1,000 is a ground level. 900 is roughly 3,000 feet. 800 is roughly 4,500 feet. You can kind of see where they are. Like, so there's 822. It is 5.6 thousand feet, right? So we mostly fly in here between 1,000 and 700. There is rarely a day at Tiger where you're going to get above 700. Majority of the time you're going to be bouncing between 1,000 and 800, right? So you don't really care about this portion of the map. This on the right hand side, it shows you wind direction through different layers and just horizontally correlated. think of it as an arrow. So here's your arrow tail and it's pointing that way. So it's shooting in this direction, right? So this is north to south. Big giant flags are a lot of speed. Smallish flag, that's less speed. Normally we want to fly in things that are less than 2 full bars. So like 1 full bar is okay. 1/2 bar is kind of getting there. 2 bars, now you're cranking. That is, so if you look at 800, 2 bars, scroll down there. That is going 12 or 7 knots an hour, I think. So it's going pretty well. And this is also showing you that the wind direction changes. So as you can see, at the bottom layers here, it's actually going east, right? From east to west, so it's going east. And then you can see where it rotates around and starts going north. There's a little bit of a dead spot here, having to do with this inversion. And then above it, it cranks really, really fast, going north again, right? So is that good enough?
Yep, I think so. And the blue line and the red line.
So the blue line, blue water. So that is your dew point. This is the temperature, because remember, this is all temperature. This is the temperature at which a water vapor will start falling out of the air and form vapor, right? The red line, and that's always there. That doesn't matter if you're in the desert, there's still going to be a temperature at which you're going to start condensing water out of that desert air. So the red line is the temperature drop through the layers. There is usually a kind of mathematical weather relationship, physics relationship that kind of forces this line to be following what's known as a dry adiabatic rate. So like the rate at which the air will cool if you start lifting it through the height, just because it expands, right? It's really predictable until it gets to certain chemical composition, at which point that relationship changes. And that's kind of where you get into those chemical compositions. So normally most of the time, and they're conveniently draw that like expected line for you right here, it's in green. And normally most of the time, the air will just continue cooling as it picks up along this green line, right? So there's really two things that you need to know about skew charts as far as predicting how far the lift will go and whether or not you're going to have clouds. Those are really the only two things that matters, right? So anytime you have dew point getting close to temperature line, that means that your temperature for that air and your dew point from that air is getting close. So that means you're going to have condensation. So if you have these two lines touching, the red and the green, the red and the blue lines touching, that is where you're actually going to start having condensation fall out of the air, right? So if they're touching for long enough, that's where that condensation is going to start actually coalescing into bigger drops, and then you're going to end up with the rain. So normally you want them just barely touching, like just kissing each other, but going apart. That's beautiful. If they start to parallel each other for a very, very long time, that means that you're going to now have a very high stack of vapor in the air all over the place, aka like a really thick cloud deck. So no sun is going to penetrate. So you're not going to have any sun on the ground, so you're not going to have any lift, right? The other thing is like if this red line is tilted more vertical than this paralleling kind of green line that's going from top to bottom, that means that the temperature line through the air is actually, the air would be like on above some air that's going up, the air actually will be warmer, so the air is not going to be able to penetrate. So inversion. So you want air to be cooling at a predictable rate, because as the air is going to start going up, it's going to expand. If it still is slightly hotter than the air above it, it's going to keep going up, right? If it's the other way around, if the air above is warm, it's going to stop. So that is, you only want to watch out for the angle of this. So right now, it's a beautiful angle. Tomorrow is going to be, is it tomorrow? No, it's today, huh? We're going to get to the date. So this would have been a great day to go flying, minus the east wind, right? Because you would have expected, and here you can kind of see, so at 4 o'clock, if I had sun hitting the ground, so I don't have clouds here, yes, I do, my air is going to go, until here, so roughly 800. So you go here, 800. So about 5,000 feet, let's say. Yeah. So we would have lifted up to about 5,000 feet if you were flying and you were able to launch today. So the above part right here, this is where you'll be able to switch the time of the forecast. So the current time for which this is plotting is that's 4 o'clock Tuesday 22nd, right? There's usually about 3 or 4 days of forecast here. They're kind of like hidden in the middle. You can just like click back and forth. So I'll just click on the 30. So it's 10 o'clock. All right. So let's go to 39. Oh, too late, too much. 36. There you go. There's 4 o'clock on Wednesday. So tomorrow, 4 o'clock. And let's go Thursday, 4 o'clock on Thursday. Okay, so we have actually like more or less all the potential conditions we can talk about. Okay, and 4 o'clock on Friday. So number one, so immediately you can see you have forecast going here all the way through Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, all the way to the end of the week, right? As opposed to Wingrams, it's just Thursday, right? Number two, you have forecast for all the layers. And to me, at this point, it's just easier to read this. I just literally just look at those 3 slots, and I know that I wouldn't go flying tomorrow or Thursday. I might go on Friday. So at that point, I'm just going to watch the MM5 forecast as the days progress, and it gets more and more accurate closer to the days. And I also can tell you, like, so Thursday is most likely going to rain until the second part of the day, but you have a lot of wind going from the top, very little wind on the bottom, very low cloud base. It's barely getting above launch. 5760.
All right, Joanna, go home. Thank you.
And then it's going to be kind of okay in the second half of the day. Now, how do I know this? Are we following so far? Steve, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, you're going pretty fast for me. I'm.
Yeah, let's slow down. Let's ask questions. Let's work through this.
Yeah.
So let's see. Let's go this way. So Wednesday, right? If I were to look at this and try and figure out, do I want to fly on Wednesday, right? Okay, so I'd find something in the middle of the day. So 1 o'clock on Wednesday, right? And I'd look and see, do I have anything weird going on with the wind? And well, there's a lot of wind from the top cranking down. There is an inversion here. See how this this red portion of this line is going all the way up, like straight vertically, right? So that means there is the same temperature all the way through all this 3,000 feet, right? It's literally the same temperature, right? So you have a air trying to get up from the ground, is going to get to this point and it's just going to stop because there's, now the temperature above it is the same temperature as the air. So it's just going to stop and park itself, right? So that's inversion. So this is kind of insulating you from all this air cranking from the top at very high speed, which is why you can see it slowing down here. And that accelerated air never actually makes it to the ground. So on the ground, you have kind of normal for Pacific Northwest, spring, summertime, just slow air going up and down the coastline, kind of hooking into Pacific Northwest, right? So you end up like with Northwest air. So that's not bad. And there is no clouds. Like there is this lines are nowhere close to touching. So it's going to be completely bluebird day. Top of lift is going to be somewhere around here where it stops following the regular curve. And roughly, let's say it's 900 something on the pressure. So I'll scroll down here and I'll go, okay, 916, close enough, 3,000 foot. That's, at the top of Tiger, at the antennas. Does that make sense?
I mean, I'm working on catching up to you. You've got a
Okay.
lot to tell me. So you went pretty fast there. So I'm seeing I mean, if I could slow it down just a second, if I'm not holding everybody up. I mean, the blue line is the dew point, and the red is the temperature of the air as we go up into the sky from the bottom to the top. And so you said there's no clouds. That's because the blue line is colder than the red line. The red is the temperature of the actual air forecast.
Correct.
The blue line is where it would turn into a cloud. And so since they're still not touching each other, no clouds.
Correct.
Okay, I followed that. And I also got you saying the vertical red, where it just goes vertical there means it's sort of a mass of air that's not moving. And so...
Well, it's a mass of air that has the same temperature, right? So the air itself is moving, like, you know, horizontally, but nothing is moving vertically, right? It's kind of big cushion of air. They're just kind of sitting there, just doing this, right?
Actually, could I just jump in there real quick, guys? So just leave it on that 33-hour one there for Lake Sammamish, Andrey. So you see where the blue line on the left takes a sharp turn to the right and then heads towards the red line. If you follow that blue line, if you would extend that blue line to that red line, that would be an altitude I would assume clouds would form. And because those two lines then run parallel up, those clouds would go from around 10,000 feet to 20,000 feet or more.
Yeah, pretty much to the top.
Yeah. So there's we're always looking, this is our red line here, and it's gonna, you know, go up and very, you know, like that one's curving a little bit. If that blue line comes up and intersects it, or like this one does, heads back towards it, then that is the altitude where clouds are going to form. And there'll be days, and there might be one in the forecast where it might go like this. And that's one of those days in the winter where we might have 3 or 4 or 5 layers of clouds overhead.
Yep. Maddie, do you think it's this will actually continue getting towards the temp line and actually will send moisture into that layer right there?
Definitely. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. All right. That's an interesting one. But in general, here you that's free and clear.
It's not going to rain.
Yeah, it's not going to rain.
It's not going to rain, but there's going to be, you know, tall clouds starting from around 10 or 11,000 feet.
Yeah.
And dry underneath that.
And the 10 or 11,000 is reflected at between 7 and 600 on the left.
Yep.
Yes. So that would be, yeah, like this will compress up and down based on the relative pressure, right? So on the high pressure days, like the 900 will get all the way almost to the ground. And like on the low pressure days, 900 is going to be at 5,000 feet, right? So am I doing this right? Yes. So 900 is going to be almost at 5,000 feet. So you kind of roughly expect it to be there, but you can always refer to the chart below and go like, okay, I mean, somewhere about 650. There you go. So it's 12,000 feet. The good thing about the MM5 SKUT as well too is like as opposed to other SKUTs that are there for like general aviation, like all of their stuff is geared towards like the last 25,000 to 30,000 feet, right? We're never there. We're like never there. If you look at like where we fly on those general SKUTs, there's like literally like 10% on the bottom of the SKUT. You can't see anything. MM5 SKUT, for some reason, I don't know why, I suspect maybe because of soaring, actually has more of the real estate devoted to where we care about, which is kind of unusual. And they also like rotate it so to even out the temperature lines, which makes it easy to read for like for inversions and the correct lapse rate. Like I love MM5 versus like any other SKUT like out there for that reason. But in general, like, so the wind direction at launch is okay, and there is nothing above it that would make me go squiggly and squirrely. So I would maybe go. Do you want to take a stab at Thursday? Oh, let's see, 54, 57. All right, so that's 1 o'clock on Thursday.
You scroll down, what's 900 bar pressure?
3,000, roughly.
What's the 60-hour one, Andre? Look like?
So there you go. So that's 4 o'clock.
I mean, this is the middle of winter, guys. I would, if I didn't have anything going on and I was there, I might hike up Tiger for a day that looked like that. But it could be a day where you might not fly and you might get rained on. But that's what paragliding's like in Washington in the winter.
Yes. So basically, this is okay. Blue red line touching, right? So you do have cloudish thing. They're not touching for a long run, so you don't have like it's not super tall clouds, right? But they're touching roughly. They start out at more or less launch level, and by 4 o'clock they're right at the Tiger level, right? So you might have cloud base right pretty much at launch or right at the antennas, but pretty like decent no wind on the bottom, so it might have like holes in clouds. There's been days where we just rallied around Tiger and Squawk all day long, dodging little rains. So that has happened before. And -8 Celsius though, so it's going to be freaking cold.
Andre, did you say that when they cross, it is raining?
Yes. Well, it is moisture falling out, starting to vapor out of that air.
Visible moisture, right?
Yeah, visible moisture. So if you get that for long enough or for high enough, then that starts to form itself into rain, just by vapor starting to collapse.
And that's about 5 miles an hour southeast at that point. Is that what I'm seeing? Or?
It is so little and light that I wouldn't even call it anything. It's probably zero. It's pretty much nothing, non-existent.
Now that's pretty much nothing, non-existent high level, but there's regional effects that may cause wind to still exist where we fly. Is that accurate?
Yes, but very little. There's a little bit of, and this is where I start looking at the top as well. So there's a really high north wind coming all the way from the top, and it's essentially grinding itself down against like kind of the marine layer that we have kind of pumping through in and out of the area throughout the day. So it will stop itself, but it stops itself by grinding through the different layers of air. But so you see it like it just, and right here, that's where it stops, right? And then now you have local air just on the bottom moving around. So you should expect like some things to be little squiggly right at the top, right?
Well, that's above the cloud layer, I guess. So they're likely not going to end up there.
With this lineup. So now if we look at Friday, oh. So yeah, so that, that's a really good lineup for a winter day. You have a little bit of southeast. See, this is slightly inverted right here at 4 o'clock, at 1 o'clock, but at 4 o'clock, I mean, the sun is kind of super low, so you wouldn't be flying there anyway. This is really good lapse rate. So it's totally paralleling the green line. So it's really good lapse rate up to 900. So it's south. There is actually probably very little clouds here because I mean that is going to be trying to send moisture really high up. Very little wind throughout all the layers, a little bit here on the bottom. And it's south day, so you're gonna have south facing slope. It's a little bit easier on Tiger on the south days in the winter trying to get up. A little bit more of a like into the sound facing area. So yeah, there's 3 slides or 3 points for me to look at. Now I know Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, right? I'm 3 days ahead of time, so I can start planning. So as far as Tiger flights, that's really all I look at.
Just so that I have an idea, where are you finding the link to this? Is there is there a less populous type of place where we can pick that up?
I'll send those. If you look for, I'll send those out.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We'll send it to people, but
Put them in the
yeah,
chat
Matty.
now, too.
Sorry, I put a link in the chat, just
Perfect.
if you scroll up a little bit. Matt Ammond, one of our local pilots who's been flying a really long time, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, did an amazing write-up on how to access the MM5 and how to read it. So scroll up in the chat, copy that link. It's a big read, and it might take you a little bit of time to decipher all of it, but it's a great way to really learn all the nuts and bolts of the MM5.
Highly recommend that one. That's been out there for a while. I was hoping to find it. Thanks, Matty. I couldn't find it. It's like the link disappeared. The MM5 links themselves, I don't think have changed ever, and they have. I have those. I'll send it back to Steve so he can post it. So they have the Sammamish one that I look at, and then they have in general. Here's what we have for Pacific Northwest, our area, but it goes up all the way to like a little bit of Oregon and all the way into Idaho as well. So here's all the points where you can generate MM5 predictions or MM5 soundings. There is some on the east side. There is like Sammamish is this one right there on spell. Yeah. Okay.
If you're looking like Blanchard, I would use Mount Vernon. Yep. Mount Vernon is the that blue one. That's the one. Yeah.
Oof. Oh, that's pretty. Minus the north. Yeah, so for Blanchard, you're gonna need something that's onshore flowing, and Blanchard should start working pretty shortly. Like normally, Blanchard starts working the first, really working in the Pacific Northwest area, like late February, early March kind of thing.
What do you see there? Those are
10 o'clock in the evening, so I'm pretty sure we're not flying.
Sure, but I just mean the you're seeing two lines like right next to each other.
Oh, okay.
What is that telling you?
So that is pretty much solid deck / possibly rain or something falling out all the way like for a number of thousands of feet with very, very high wind. This is more or less just storm like running through in the middle of the night or like at 10 o'clock on Wednesday.
You want to just like pick 2 or 3 at random and describe them for everybody, and maybe that'll help us what you just told us to sink in.
Andrey, I've got some screenshots that I've collected over the years from various days.
Great.
And also a comparison between Tiger and Blanchard. So if you guys like, I could we could switch over screens and I could run you through the screenshots of the MM5 that I've prepared.
That sounds awesome.
Great.
Let's do it.
That sounds great. One quick question, guys, that I've had for a while that I haven't been able to get a good answer on is, are wind gusts shown at all in MM5, or are they an impact at all in our decision to fly?
No, I don't think so. I think the wind gust would be more of a function of the instability. And if there was a storm coming through like we just saw, obviously and the wind's strong, it's probably going to be pretty gusty if it's cloud going all the way up like that last one that Andrey had up.
Yeah, while Matty is trying to pull it up, like the wind gust, you kind of have to I always try to picture what is actually happening with the wind gust. Like, so that's like the air being rubbery and things pulling on each other from different directions, right? And to me, there is a little bit of two versions of wind gust. Like one is the horizontal, when you actually do have a little bit of air trying to pump through different obstructions, and it will pile up here, punch through like the valley. That will cause a localized pressure drop. Where it punched from, that will suck air in, like stuff like that, right? And the other one is when you have like a very, very strong layer on top and somewhat more stable layer on the bottom. Like the strongly moving layer on top will actually oscillate up and down and will send like a little bit of gust kicking through. On the east day here, you can actually see those. Like if you like each day clear, there's very much east honking on top of us, and I'll hopefully like get to a slide where I show why I don't fly on Tiger on these days. and you can actually see like the trees will start shaking from the top and it will shake all the way down. Like not that way around. They will go like just start violently shaking from the top and just go down. You can see like smoke actually go like stop and reverse and just slam into the ground. Like you want to try and avoid those days when that's happening around you. Just like look around, go like, oh no, I'm not going to go flying in those days.
Interesting stuff. Thank you.
All right, so this is, I think there was a discussion last year online I got involved with, so I took a bunch of screenshots and chatted with a few people about it. So this is leading up to March 15, which is just around a month, less than a month away this year. So this one is 45 hours out. And so one of the rules of thumb that I have when I'm looking at weather, because the MM5 goes 84 hours out, which is 3.5 days before the actual forecast. If the forecast looks good 84 hours out and continues to look good as the day gets closer and still looks fantastic or even better than the original forecast, it's going to be a really, really good day. This forecast is the opposite. This forecast actually looks pretty good at Tiger, 45 hours out, but I'm going to scroll through them here. So the next day, not so good.
All I'm seeing, Matt, is
yeah, it's frozen.
Your tiny icons. You may be sharing the wrong part of your screen.
Okay, let me go back. Sorry, guys. I haven't done this before. Okay, let me stop sharing and start again, and I'll see what's going on here.
I've done that before, for sure.
Can you see that now?
Yes, I see 45 hours.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so this actually looks pretty good. We've got northwest wind, light to moderate wind through the convective layer. So we can see the lift is going to go up to maybe 4,200 feet. Notice how the lines kind of touch. That could potentially bring us a little bit of rain, or you know, good cloud development, or it will definitely bring us cloud development. So that's nice, because when we see clouds, we know there's thermals and we can see where the thermals are. The other thing I'm noticing on this one here is you can see that the lines are only kind of touching together for, I don't know, maybe 1,000 feet. So the clouds are only going to be 1,000 feet deep, which is good. We don't want the clouds to be taller than they are wide, because, you know, that's not what we're looking for when we're paragliding. The other thing that makes this forecast look good is these lines pull away. So after the clouds have formed, the top of the clouds, it gets dry. So that means with those patchy clouds, there's going to be a lot of sunlight getting through. As we're looking up this blue line, we're noticing it doesn't like point directly back towards the red line. So it should be blue all the way up. Okay. Let me scroll to the next image. Whoops. So this is, you know, 12 hours later, I've looked at the same forecast and it's deteriorated. And then, whoop, now it's looking the same forecast, another 12 hours later, actually looks good again. So it's one of those days where, oh, it could be good. Maybe I'll go flying. Oh no. So it's not a day that I'm going to be like, oh, it's going to be epic. But then you'll notice now the lines have pulled apart a little bit. So that means there's still going to be good cloud development, but a lot less chance of rain. So now I'm getting a little more excited. So now we look at it another 12 hours closer. This is 5 p.m. actually. We're noticing the lines have pulled back together again. That can sometimes be good if the day starts off blue, and then the lines don't touch, and then later in the day they do touch. That could be a day that could be very good, because as the day gets on, you know, it's getting closer to raining and more cloud development as the day goes on. I'll keep scrolling through because I've got a lot from this day. Yeah, so again, good wind. That one's really good there. You know, they're not touching. Touching again. And so now we're 12 hours out. And they've pulled apart. So that's MM5 run from 9 a.m. So that's a day that I might go flying at Tiger. but you'll notice at 2, yeah, they're also very good. So that would be a good day to go to Tiger in the winter. But one thing that I just want to point out, this is exactly the same day at Mount Vernon. If I saw this at Mount Vernon or for Blanchard, I would 100% of the time go to Blanchard. If it looks like it's probably going to be very good at Tiger, it's always going to be way better at Blanchard in February, March, and April. There's been countless days over the years where I've gone to Blanchard and dozens of people and having beautiful flights, and dozens of people are sitting on launch at Tiger, and it's clouded out, it's shaded out, or it's raining. So just be aware of that. You know, being able to look at these forecasts and interpret them are one thing, but identifying the right place to go flying at the right time of year is equally as important. So just be aware. You mean Blanchard, I used to live in North Seattle. I can get to Blanchard in exactly the same amount of time as I can to Tiger. Because at Tiger, you got to park, you know, it's 30, 40 minutes to Tiger. Then you got to hike up, get the shuttle. If you drive to Blanchard, you could be on launch in 1 hour and 10 minutes. And you drive straight up there. So there's a lot of awesome folks up there. Hoagie's online here. He's a local up there. So really fun community to get involved with if you haven't been to Blanchard. Massive, big LZ, perfect takeoffs. And so the wind we're looking for at Blanchard is west or south or southwest. It'll also work with a little bit of west, northwest, but generally we're looking for that south component in the wind there at Blanchard. One interesting thing about flying Blanchard is it can look like it's going to thunderstorm on the MM5 in the spring. And it can, so long as it's post-frontal, you can fly and you can fly right next to really, really big clouds, because out in the Straits of Juan de Fuca is stable air and blue skies. So right behind you over I-5 could be rain, and right over launch could be beautiful clouds, and straight out in front of you over the Salmon Islands can be blue sky and just fantastic flying conditions. So that was one set of slides I've got. I've got some more. Are you guys still seeing my screen? Oops, this is weird. It just closed. Screen sharing is stopped. Okay, let me do some more slides here. Oh, hang on, guys. I just got to prepare it before I share it, I guess. Just give me a sec.
Well, I think everybody's thrilled to be here, so don't stress about taking a minute.
Okay.
I am.
So here, let's just switch it up a little bit. Let me go to Chelan here to show you what a good day looks like over there on the MM5, because it's very, very different. Share. All right, so this would be a day where if we were running the competition or something like that, we would set, you know, 100 or 200 kilometer task. I've also got next to it what the windgram would look like on the same day. So this is 4th of July last year. And so you can see, you know, the top of lift as the day heats up in the afternoon gets higher and higher, all the way up to 9,000 feet around the butte. And you can see the winds are light. So you never want to fly Chelan when you've got these barbs like this on the butte. You know, if we were flying Chelan on a day like this, that's great. We've got, you know, 0 to light winds from variable directions, which is very common there at the early part of the day. And then, you know, by the time 6 or 7 o'clock comes around, we'll probably be near Idaho flying out a long way. And if we've got 10 or 15 knot tailwind, which you can see from that previous slide. So this is a freighter. So there's actually not a MM5 for Chelan itself. So a freighter is actually out in the middle of the kind of the Waterville Plateau or Eastern Washington there. So I use a freighter just for a generalized forecast for out there. But so you can see, this line, like Andrei was describing, runs parallel to that green one, which is the dry adiabatic lapse rate. You'll notice right around 10,000 feet here, it has a little kink in it. So that's the altitude that we'd expect the thermals to slow down or stop. But we'd also assume that would be where cloud base is forming, because that blue line is coming up and roughly intersecting with that red line. You'll notice above that, the blue line pulls away from the red line, which is something that we also desire, because that means, above the clouds aren't tall, and above the clouds we have blue sky. Another thing that's I'm also looking for is that these this upper level, if this line was a little bit more kinked, like in this direction, then that would tell me that we're going to get high cloud. And so that wouldn't be desirable, because that high cloud is going to filter the sun and slow down the thermal production underneath it. So I've got another one here. So this is a day where you probably wouldn't want to fly Chelan. So you can see, oh yeah, nice. There's light winds in the morning. That paraglider gets higher and higher as the day goes on, but 15 and 20 knots, it's too much. It's unsafe for us. Even at Tiger, I mean, like I only like to see the one barb, the half a barb, which is 5 knots, and the big barb, which is 10 knots. 10 knots is 18 kilometers an hour of wind. Some days at Tiger, it's going to be flyable with the 1.5 barbs and the 15 knots, but I'm not saying it's not unsafe to fly at Tiger. We'll definitely fly there with 15 knots, but definitely not with 2 barbs. 20 knots is too much. We're going backwards. So I'm just going to stop sharing this one and just show you a few more from Eastern Washington. All right, so in the last few years, we've got a few new takeoffs on Saddle Mountain, which is just south of Vantage on the east side of the Columbia River. And historically, we've only really flown there with north wind, but in the last few years, we've made a few new takeoffs that are on the west side of the mountain, and we've got a south-facing takeoff, a northwest-facing takeoff, and a southwest-facing takeoff. So this was actually from a clinic I ran last year, and we flew this day, and I believe it was very good. And so again, you'll notice, that red line is running parallel with the green line. So we've got lift going up to, potentially maybe 8,500, 9,000 feet. This one is showing me we're probably not going to get any clouds at 2 p.m. But then at 5 p.m., you'll notice, that blue line comes a lot closer. So as the day progresses, we're probably going to get, cloud development, maybe upwards of 11,000 feet, and a pretty good wind blowing us at altitude. So with 15 knots of wind, we could expect to be traveling around with a 25 to 30 kilometer hour tailwind. So we might have a trim speed of 60 kilometers an hour, which allows you to travel a lot further quicker. And what we're looking for, if we do have those stronger upper level winds, we want to see, manageable winds on the ground. We don't want it to be, ideally, we don't really want it to be blowing 15 or 20 on the ground, especially in Eastern Washington, because in the middle of summer, particularly in July, the thermals are so strong. You mix those really powerful thermals with strong wind, and it can get really turbulent, and you don't want that strong turbulence close to the ground.
Mehdi,
Yeah.
Is that the potential? Oh, this one as well. Is there a potential Cirrus there as well?
I think this is just a different day, but same kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. Did you have a question, Andre?
I was just going to point out that there's also, I would also maybe look for Cirrus there as well. like the all the way up at the top.
This one here, yeah, good point. Yeah, so see this line here, even though it goes off the chart, we'd assume that red line would continue off the chart up here, but this line looks like it's going to intersect that red line somewhere up here. So yeah, you're definitely right, Andre. I would expect maybe a thin layer of high cloud on this one here. So these are just hand fed, and then this is Othello, so this would be along my route. So we're going to fly past Othello, so I can bring this one up on the same day and look and see what the wind and clouds and stuff are going to be doing out there. Did you guys okay, if you guys are pretty green pilots, I think the best thing to do from a simplistic point of view is look at Yuri's wingrams, because that will allow you a nice simple overview without you having to click on a lot of buttons and start searching around the MM5 and looking too far out on these models. It's a lot simpler. Read through those Matt Ammons notes that I gave you a link to, get an understanding of how this kind of works, and when you go flying, what I think what I do, and I think a lot of people do, is we use the wingram to see if there's a good day coming, and if we see a good day, then we'll start to dive a little deeper into the MM5, because if you don't see a paraglider off the ground on the wingrams, there's probably no point really looking too deep into it, because those wingrams, they're pretty good a lot of the time. So George, you asked me a question as what weather model I use, and I use this GFS, and the only reason why I do that is just I've built up a relationship with the GFS over the years, and I've learned to trust it. I've learned to be able to look at a snapshot of a day, and as that day approaches, and have a certain level of confidence of whether it's going to be a good day and what the day is going to be like. I know a lot of people look at these, I don't know, there's all sorts of acronyms. There's like 5 different models you can look at on SkySight and XE Skies. Did you guys want me to bring up XE Skies and show you what that looks like? Because that's a subscription model that you can subscribe to. I think it's like $40 a year. I think SkySight is $80 a year subscription. But SkySight is a pretty new one that was designed for sailplanes, and it incorporates a lot of additional layers to the weather, where they predict convergence lines in the sky for sailplanes and stuff. So if you like, I can bring up XE Skies and run through that real quick.
Yeah, that works for me. I mean, I'm gonna take whatever you're given. So
okay.
I don't know if other people have other suggestions, but I love the learning.
Does anybody have any questions on what I've covered so far?
So while you're bringing that up, Maddie, I'm just going to say that it makes a lot more sense now. If you become familiar with a particular model and you understand where its weaknesses and its strengths are, and you understand when it says something, what that day is going to look like, and especially if you're doing the research ahead of time and seeing how the model progresses and how it changes, then it makes a lot of sense that you get a lot more information from a stable prediction rather than going to different places and getting all kinds of conflicting information.
Yeah. So I'm just going to stop sharing again and reload my screen.
Hey, Maddie, before you jump off, can you or Andre explain what the red dashed line and the lavender or the violet line is on the MM5?
Sure.
Thanks.
Let me just bring that back up again. Okay, sorry, say that again, the violet line. You mean this dashed line?
Yeah, the dashed line, and then there's the slightly askew, sort of looks like violet on my screen. Solid.
Yeah, I don't. Andre, do you know?
Yeah, that one's actually a really good one. The slightly askew violet, that is the actual normalized, fully wet dew point like lift line. So see how it parallels the blue line, the dew point blue line. So that is actually how you dew from the ground. The actual moisture evaporated from the ground would be lifting through the column. That's your normalized line. And that's why usually on the bottom portion of that exercise, that usually like that's where your dew point is getting plotted. The dashed red line, that's your fully saturated it's wet adiabatic line. So, you know, so the dry line is how the air is, the green line is how the air is lifting when there is moisture in it, but it's not fell out yet. Once the moisture starts to fall out, that changes the rate at which the temperature drops. It actually slows it down. So that's why the clouds are actually slightly taller. You know, when it gets past that point where the dew point falls out, the cloud still grows because they're still getting lifted because they're lifted at a different rate now. So that's how you can actually predict if there's going to be, if those clouds would overdevelop into a full-on thunderstorm. So on a slide that Maddie's showing right now, at that point where clouds are going to fall out at like 850 or so, that where they hit that dew point, that cloud, if the red line would have kept paralleling that red dash line, that would mean that as the clouds would fall out, moisture forms, it still keeps going up and it's cooling at the same rate as the temperature is dropping. So it's just going to keep going up and up and up and up and up. So it's just going to keep building clouds all the way through the layer. And that's going to be the thunderstorm. Here in that one that Matt is showing, that's actually is slightly inverted more. So it will stop the development. It will actually cap it off pretty quickly at like 1,000, maybe to 2,000 feet.
Thank you.
Cool.
Julie, I was asking, what is, that's getting really into the sense of it. What is a normalized dew point?
Well, that's just like if you have air dissolved into water, like actually air from the ground, how you would expect that air to retain temperature, that moisture to retain temperature, it's getting actually lifted. So it's kind of like the same kind of idealized dry adiabatic rate. It's like, 1 degree centigrade per 100 meters. So there is the same kind of predicted curve for fully just the piece of moisture that's getting lifted through the air.
So Andrey, I've always thought of this as like, imagine a lake and air lifting off a lake, and that's what your saturated parcel would look like, versus like a really dry spot somewhere in the middle of somewhere. That's what the dry air would look like. Is that an accurate representation or a way to think about it?
More of a, Matt has actually an explanation for it. So, like if you try to dissolve more, like you try to boil water, you end up with vapor on top because you actually putting like energy into that mixture and it's actually able to absorb more water. So you end up with vapor. So reverse process kind of happens when you get the air and condense air moisture out of it because it reaches a certain like this carrying capacity. That parcel all of a sudden starts generating a little bit of extra energy because you actually using the chemistry goes in backwards, right? So that actually keeps that parcel slightly warmer. So it cools less as it goes up. So that's why those two rates are different. Like once like fully like dissolved moisture in the air cools at one rate. Once you actually change the chemical composition where you actually have now little water droplets, now all of a sudden that thing cools at a different rate combined.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Sorry, Maddie, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'll just go ahead and pull up my XC Skies. All right, so I'm currently in Thailand, so I have the forecast for here for today. So if I just zoom out a little bit, you'll see there's Bangkok over here, and the site that I'm going to go flying tomorrow is called the Bridge on the River Kwai. It's in a little town called Kanchanaburi, and the site is it's on the edge of this mountain here. So the cool thing about XE Skies is you've got all these layers that you can put over the top. So what you can see right now is, hang on, I've got to move my bar there. Okay. So let's get rid of this. So right now I've got the top of usable lift. And so at 11 o'clock tomorrow, it's the 23rd here. At 11 o'clock, you'd expect the lift to go up to about 5,000 feet. And so the takeoff faces northeast, and the wind is blowing from the northeast at 20 kilometers an hour. Now, that's actually kind of strong, but this site needs strong wind because the takeoff is only 300 feet up, and it's on the end of this little mountain out of a car park next to a Buddha. And so what I like to do is, work my way through the day and watch how the wind and top of usable lift changes in the flying arena that I'm going to be flying in. Now, you'll notice the wind's kind of backing off as the day goes on, and the top of the usable lift goes up from 5,000 to 6,000 feet as the day kind of progresses. So that's good. It's it's not too windy on the ground. I'm getting nice and high. The wind's so what time is that? 3 o'clock. Now we're getting up to 7,000 feet. Oh, awesome. So another thing I'll do is I'll move the wind to the top of usable lift, and I might go through those layers as well and make sure the wind is blowing me, in a favorable direction. And so for this area here, this is the direction I'm going to be flying. I can't fly into these mountains because that's jungle in Burma. So there's other layers that we could look at on here. Let me go to 2 o'clock, highlight those layers again. So I could look at the XE potential. So possibly good. So what we really want is this red stuff over there. So let's go back a little bit. Is it good earlier? So that's so another one is the Cape. So I'll leave my cursor over that so you can see this is the convective available potential energy. So let me click on that. And so it doesn't look very good at all. That's at 11 a.m. There's no color at all on the map. So maybe it's not a good day for me to go flying. What you really want is for it to be in this yellow, orange, or red color. Let's look at the next day.
Hey, if you don't like the forecast, just switch to icon. I'm sure it's going to have better information.
Yeah, so you can see at the top there, I've got the GFS, which is the same one that generates the MM5 and generates the wind grams. In America, you'll probably have all of these lit up: the European icon, the NAM12, the NAM3, the RAP, and the HRR. So you could go down a rabbit hole getting super confused looking at 6, 7 different models here in the US. Another thing I might look at would be cloud cover. Okay, so that's good. It's going to be blue at 2 o'clock. Let's look at 5 o'clock. Okay, so it looks like over towards Bangkok, there's a storm developing. And then precipitation, if there's a chance of precipitation, I'd be looking at that. So there's all these different layers that you can use on XE Skies to kind of, like I said, go down a rabbit hole and get an abundance of information. I think in Washington, I don't use XE Skies in Washington. Some pilots do. I think it's commonly referred to as XE Lies. So you can take that for whatever it's worth.
Like I said, if it doesn't look good, just switch to a different model and tell you better things.
Yeah, totally.
Question, Matt.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at Cape there, my understanding of Cape is that's the energy that's being generated, like of a cloud being created, or there's a storm brewing essentially, or energy there. You're looking for some of that on your
yeah, definitely. Yep. You want some instability in the atmosphere. You want, if we were looking at it on a skew T, you want that line to be at a certain angle. If that line's too steep, then it's too stable, and then that heat's not going to be able to rise through the atmosphere. So I don't know why it said top of usable lift of 5,000 or 6,000 feet, but there's no energy underneath it. I guess I'd have to go up there and see. Sometimes forecasts are wrong, as you know, living in the Northwest.
right. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's all I pretty much had prepared. Does anybody have any questions or have anything to add?
I'm curious to see Andrey's reasoning behind east wind, the Tiger.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot that. That's the main reason why I volunteered for actually trying to explain this. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. Let me try and share this my screen again. So yeah, Maddie did like a bang up job showing like the different variations of how MM5 race. But as you can see, like a lot of this between me and Maddie both, like just look at MM5. MM5 will tell you a lot of information for any given day, and just you after a while you just get really comfortable with looking at it, and it tells you pretty much everything you need to know. All right, let me share my screen. So Tiger East thing. Oh, hold on, maybe we share it differently. Stop share. Share. Screen one. Share. All right. So actually, there is a little bit of strangeness that's happening in Pacific Northwest, especially Tiger specifically, and I got like 3 slides about it, and then you can just ask questions or bounce. Is that people kind of look at the bottom and they just look at like there is north wind going through all the way through launch height, and then there is like east honking at 3,000 to 4,000 feet, and people just look at it and go like, never mind, it's it's north wind at launch. I'm free. Okay, I'm okay to go launch from Tiger north and go flying. And that ends up predictably badly every now and then for people, and people just eat it and go into the trees. So I kind of want to explain why, because you don't, from the ground, it doesn't appear to be clear. So I just took a straight up like line drive from on a Google Earth from all the way from launch. So that's actually from LZ all the way going east, which is North Bend, right? And here's the elevation profile of that from North Bend going to launch, right? This is launch right here. I mean, is anybody surprised by this picture? That is like when you stay on launch, you don't think about it this way, but you literally launching west into a canyon, and there's an east wind honking above you, going usually sometimes pretty high. So let me like just do it slightly differently. Oh boy, yeah. So kind of did an illustration to scale on this one. So here's my illustration to scale. So this is you launching from north. Here's launch. What happens a lot, this is like looking from south to north, like, and here's the launch right there. What happens a lot is that you do have a little bit of sun, especially on these days, because the air is more stable above, it's drier. So there is actually no clouds, sun is shining, hitting the ground. You do have a little bit of adiabatic just flow up the hill. So you stay on launch and you see actually winds coming up, just cycling normally through launch. And every now and then, here's like kind of that giveaway. Every now and then just stops and reverses, or the windsock just dies and goes like wiggle, and sometimes points east. If there is a east above you, like literally 10,000+ feet of east going 20-30 miles an hour, like all of that east coming from the past is going to start bouncing. This is rattlesnake, through the A valley where the 18 runs, rolls back up Tiger, and then plummets down over the top into that valley between Squawk and Tiger. Like, you are actually not feeling it. You will feel it as soon as you will launch. And what gets people a lot is just literally just sheer coming off of Tiger and hitting that north and just diving into like towards the LZ. At LZ, you sometimes will actually see the windstock cycling to east all the time. So that's why, especially on Tiger, where you do have, kind of the marine or a little bit more stable layer on the bottom, kind of frequently meeting layers that run on top as well, you have to pay attention to what the layer above you are doing. Hopefully that is a good illustration for people.
That's actually really good, Andrey. Yeah, I think a lot of us have gotten away with flying on marginal east days, and we don't climb very high. We get the slithery in, and sometimes it's rowdy and sometimes it's smooth. But I think that this is a really good illustration of the lottery you're playing whenever you launch in this kind of weather. Sure, you might make it to the LZ just fine most of the time, but that's the reality of what's actually happening there.
Yeah, it does not look like, it's always surprised me every time we do that line. It does not look that this is that big of a drastic drop, but you literally you're launching into the canyon as far as the east wind is concerned, and the wind is right behind you. So cool. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, stop sharing this. All right, anybody questions?
Yeah, I've got about 1,000 questions, and they're all kind of like, I can't figure out what words to use to ask them, because this is great. I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, this is a lot of just scratching the surface. As people have pointed out, there's so many resources out there. Windy is a really big one, and Windy has so many models and so many views and so many different aspects of it. I think Matthew had a really good point of take the small part of it and become familiar with it. That's the wonderful thing about the TJ Only and Erie, what he's been doing with windgrams, because it's kind of really digested down for us, and it's a single source of information. And if you look at that every day and you compare it to what's actually happening, then you start building a model of how accurate and what that actually means, and it becomes a source of information. But it's always better to have a good model that you understand rather than several that will tell you different things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing, look at the windgram, look at what's above you, and learn how to understand the MM5 that we spent a lot of time on. I'm still looking at windy to see what the prevailing is, wanting to see something, northwest, south there as well. But I'm hearing, again, look above that, because windy, is that at the surface?
You can adjust it. You can set it to look at different elevations as well.
Okay.
So would it be useful to look at how to use windy for people?
If you guys have the time and if you're willing to, I think a lot of people would really appreciate that.
Sure, let me pull it up and see what it looks like. You can also, I'll show you how to generate a skew T out of windy as well, because that can be quite handy. I have it up.
Maddie, if you have windy generate a skew T, does it can you select which model it's basing that off of?
I'm not sure. Let's dive into it. Obviously, I'm looking at the wrong stuff here. This is the surf forecast. So let's look at wind.
I believe windy can only do ECMWF for those.
No, it's right there at the bottom. You can see you can pick GFS, ECM, NAM, or ICON.
Okay, so right now let's pull
Or the
to Washington. Do I zoom? Sorry, I don't use this very often. Up top, here we go. So where are we? Tuesday. And so you're using this across the bottom to scroll through different times. And where's this? All right, so if I right click there, it comes up like that. And on the bottom here, I click on the sounding. And so.
Look at that.
Okay, so now it's not quite as easy to see, but you'll notice I can actually scroll across the bottom and you'll notice that sounding is going to change when I go through different parts of the day. Look, there's that one that looked like the one Andrey was showing us somewhere. I don't even know where that was. Right?
Yep.
And actually, you know, the times of all of this might be off because I don't know if if I've got my UTM set correctly. But anyway, so there's so you can look at the soundings by right clicking like that. You can change the different models across here, and like Zach was saying, you can use this on the right to change the elevation. And so you can see there 900 millibars is 3,000 feet. And so now you can see the wind. And so that's in knots. What I usually like to do when I'm using weather models, if I can adjust the settings, I'll generally set the wind to kilometers an hour. Not because I'm Australian, but because it's got more definition in it. If you've got it in knots, like this one's set to, you know, 5 knots is, you know, 5 kilometers is a much smaller unit than 5 knots. It's almost half. So I might go into the settings. Well, how do I do that? Change my settings to kilometers an hour. And so now all those colors are going to represent, you know, different things, and I'm going to get more definition in my my wind forecast. So you can see there at, you know, 3,000 feet, you know, the east wind is pouring out of the Cascades at, you know, whatever time of day that is. So that'd be a day, you know, like Andrey was describing, you wouldn't want to fly Tiger because not only are you getting the turbulence over Rattlesnake and, you know, the southeast Tiger Summit and Tiger Mountain, you're also getting all the turbulence rolling over the Cascades. So I'd expect if it's moderately windy from the east in the Cascades, even if it is a north day and it is safe to fly at Tiger, it might be a little more turbulent than normal. Is there anything else on here, guys, that you can think of that is relevant for paragliding for the
yeah.
You're going to highlight all the paragliding sites. There you go.
So Maddie, if you just left click on one of those spots, like one of the paragliding spots, or really any spot, I think it'll bring up a bottom bar that gives you a few more options.
Is that click for local for? Oh yeah, look at that. Woo, cool. Look at that.
And then here you have some options at the bottom. If you click the airgram, then it kind of gives us a slightly more familiar.
Awesome, George. Thank you. I'm learning stuff here.
Right on.
Also, easy to see where clouds are going to be on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this one
Okay.
works on their app on the phone the same way as it does here on the website. So it's a pretty full-featured little app.
Oh, neat.
There's a lot
Cool.
of information out there, and it's easy to get confused. Speaking from personal experience.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else on here, George, that you could teach us?
That's what I use, more or less.
The other thing that's really cool about the windgrams, other than that nice, quick, easily referenced thing, if you ever go somewhere and the forecast looks good and the flying looks shit, at least you can blame Yuri.
The wind reaction. I was just in Costa Rica, and it was very, very stable days for the most part, and every day looked almost exactly the same, except for maybe just a little bit better. And it was very interesting to try and predict what it was going to look like, and then see what it actually looked like. I didn't get a lot of good flying, but I got a lot of really good understanding in stable days what's actually going to happen. It was a great exercise. It's a really cool thing to just go and use the tool and try and predict what's going to happen and go and observe.
Well, I know I really don't want this to end. So, you know, if you have some other topics or if people have questions, I think now's the time before we get tired or lose our momentum.
Well, a lot of you have a lot more experience matching the predictions to what you actually see happening. So I'm curious, what's everyone's favorite forecast model and what seems to be most accurate for this local area?
So I can tell you, actually, yeah, somebody else.
I was going to say that that's a really loaded question. My experience has been that I've used Windy before. I've not used the MM5. What's interesting is that this is the first time I've had an opportunity to look at it. And now I see the deep value of it. So I think I'm going to start looking at that a lot more often. And thank you guys all very much for showing me how to look at it and understand what it's going to show me. That being said, I have used Wingrams. That's the American version of Wingrams quite a few times with great results. And I've had a much better look when I go to places like Blanchard or Tiger to use the Canadian version of Wingrams, which they call a RASP. Canada RASP. You can look at it that way. I'll try and put a link in the chat. Those are really good, sort of very specific, high resolution Wingram type forecast models that seem to be pretty accurate. But yeah, sometimes when I'm doing things that are for my kiting stuff, I'll often just look at what the surface wind is doing, because all I really care about is, you know, is it predicted to be going north at Jefferson Park or something like that. But yeah, I think that these are all very good forecasting systems.
One thing I was going to say is,
Go ahead, George.
sorry, I'll make this really quick, but I found the Weather Channel app on the iPhone for locally here is usually fairly accurate. So I'll use that as my first indicator of, is this a day I want to go fly? For whatever reason, it just seems to be fairly accurate. But for more detailed, if I plan to do anything more than just an hour of just boating around the Tiger, then yeah, I'll pull up Windy.
I'd like to clarify real quick that I didn't mean like sources of information or like that, because all of this is great. I was thinking more like ENC, WF versus GFS versus NAM. I personally find GFS for when I want to do kiting or powered paragliding to be the most useful for winds on the ground. I'm not so sure about, you know, winds aloft and things like that. I haven't looked at that so much in the past myself.
All I know about it is GFS is meant to be global. It does very high level, very coarse points, and it's fairly accurate for larger weather patterns, but it breaks down the more detailed the terrain that you're flying in, the more it's going to not be as useful. So like in the mountains, I don't even look at GFS because it's kind of useless. But depending on how dense of a terrain you're flying in, really no weather model is really going to help you significantly more. So I'm starting to give into Maddie's idea of just find one, understand it, and understand its weaknesses.
Yeah, like localized Tiger predictions. I don't know. I think, well, GFS is the 30-kilometer edge facet, right? So I mean, MM5. I stopped looking at everything else out in MM5 because MM5 is 99% accurate, especially 12 hours out. It's super accurate, like, you know, especially for just generalized predictions for Sammamish, specifically 4 kilometer, you know, square around Sammamish. So for Tiger, works out perfect. For anything Pacific Northwest, east side HRR3 works pretty well on a, you know, on Chilean and that side right there. And anywhere just along the mountains, the BRAP 13 works really well too. And then everywhere else, it just depends, like, you know, like whatever localized model might work better in some regions. But yeah, for Tiger specifically, like it's 100% MM5 all the time for me. MM5 is just stick my head outside and stare at some trees for like 5 minutes, and stick my head back in. I tell you a lot.
Okay, complete noob here, but I've been looking at those wingrams for a while too, and like Friday, for example, showed no lift, had a 70-minute flight. The Sunday before that showed no lift, had a 30-minute flight, and I was expecting sledders. Like, I mean, there's some variability, right?
It's pure skill. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what, you know, forecasts can be wrong. We can blame Yuri. I don't know. Yeah, or like George said, you know, you're crushing it, man. But you know, the forecast can be wrong. And it's, you know, it's a treat when you go to Tiger and everyone else stays home because the forecast looks shit, and you get to have, you know, a 70-minute flight or 30-minute flight or whatever. So stoked for you, man. That's really cool, especially in winter. I mean, we can go 90 days in a row and not get a flying day in winter. So if you can get out and even just get a sled ride at this time of the year, I think that's pretty neat. I mean, we had a day a few years ago. You guys, maybe 6-7 years ago, you've probably seen some photos posted around. I think we sat on launch for like 5-6 hours, and then all of a sudden it opened up and we were all flying above the clouds, and there were these rainbows between the clouds, and it was fucking crazy beautiful. But it was just one of those days where, you know, there's just so many different layers of moisture, and, you know, those opportunities, those very short special moments can occur, you know, even with a shitty forecast. So stoked that you got to fly, Bryce.
Thank you.
If you guys, you know, Steve, sounds like you're happy to keep listening if we're got some information. One, you know, with the season coming up, there's a couple of things that I like to talk to pilots about, and the one thing is ground handling. I think you know, because Tiger, the takeoffs are so user friendly, you know, nice grassy slopes. You know, and depending on where you learn, there's sometimes not the emphasis on ground handling that potentially there should be. I feel there's a very direct correlation between the amount of time people put into ground handling and their confidence and skill in the air. The more you ground handle, the more intuitive you become with your active piloting skills when you're in the air, because, you know, often, you know, keeping that glider above your head on the ground is gonna take the same kind of reaction and give you similar feedback when you're on the ground. So, you know, if you guys are new pilots and you know, have done a little ground handling and can launch, you know, safely, confidently most of the time, I would strongly recommend putting in hundreds and hundreds of more hours ground handling until you get to the point where that glider becomes part of you and you don't have to think about it. The glider will eventually become an extension of your body, and you'll be able to bring the wing up in a variety of conditions and you know, in a lot of different takeoffs. Last year in January, I was fortunate enough to take a fantastic trip to Hawaii with some friends, and actually Alexia was there as well, and we flew every different site on Hawaii. I think there was like maybe 7 different sites we flew, but every single one of them, not one of them you would have got off with mediocre ground handling skills. Every single one of them required, you know, it was either a cliff launch or you had to like bring your wing up on a flat section and then get it into the wind gradient, or you had to like, dodge trees and jump over a fence, or, every single takeoff on Oahu required, high level of ground handling skills. And if you didn't have those skills, and you took a trip to Hawaii, you wouldn't have flown once. You would have missed out on, tons of fantastic flying. So for you new pilots listening, I would highly recommend putting in hundreds and hundreds of hours of ground handling until you get really, really, really good at it, because it'll help keep you safe and it'll help give you confidence in the air, and it'll prevent you from scaring yourself every time you have a sketchy takeoff.
And piggybacking on that, please let me know. I have a tendency to go ground handling a lot more often than I fly. I would say that I have a wing up above my head about 10 times more often than I have a wing over my head when I'm flying. And so I tend to broadcast that out as often as I can when I'm going to go to certain places. A lot of people on this chat have followed me, or at least know that that's what I do. And so I'll continue to do that to make it easier to have that be a thing, so that people can sort of follow along with that and get better. Because like Maddie said, it really is there's a deficit I see with people who learned at Tiger specifically. And even if you just learned around the Pacific Northwest, we have very favorable launches. There are not a lot of places where it's very difficult or challenging to launch here. And so, yeah, get more skill on the ground, you'll be happier. And hey, man, you can launch at Jefferson Park on a Northwest day. You can launch, you only go 20 or 30 yards maybe, but you still get your feet off the ground. And I think that I calculated it. I figure in the time that I've been just doing ground handling at Jefferson, I have launched my glider at least 2,000 times in that little tiny area. And it helps to learn all that stuff. And I will continue to post on the Shenanigang, on the probably not on Wacom Paragliding, because it doesn't really matter to those guys, but also to the Northwest Paragliding Club on days when I'm going to go out.
Thank you so much for doing that, Thor. Much appreciated.
Oh,
Yeah,
hold on.
thanks,
I also wanted to do a plug too. So since maybe a lot of newbies here, also just make sure you do an SIV eventually, maybe this year. Matt can help you out with that. Maddie, you still doing them at the Riffle? Oh, you're on mute. Maddie, you're on mute.
I know he is doing them. I just signed up for.
I'm mute, sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, I'll post a link there, guys. The first ones in May and June are booked out right now, but we've got some more in August and September. And actually the August, September ones are much more reliable with the weather. So yeah,
it will make your flying a lot better. That's like, you should do it. If you've never done one and you're P2, P3, you should absolutely plan on doing it. It will scale your flying. That was like a really crucial part in everybody's piloting experience. Like, you should do it. Absolutely.
I guess one question. Have been having a lot of fun doing ground handling and little launches at Gasworks and Jefferson and other places. Do you know of any places around here that you can get more beginner friendly experience with cliff launches or small cliffs, or something without getting hucked off of Fort Flagler and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, for Fort Flagler, the east launch there in winter can be really good, because there's that big whole parade ground behind, and it is kind of a cliff launch, so you're dealing with that kind of rotor behind the cliff. The Fort Flagler North launch, that's more of a summer kind of destination. That's definitely the sketchiest place I've ever flown, and I've flown a lot of places. You've got to literally, flying the north side there, you've got to literally pull your wing up from a weird angle, get yarded into the air, and then you've just got to have, you know, the locals just deal with it out there. It's kind of interesting because a lot of them are kind of older, crusty dudes, but they're just, that's their MO. You know, they go out there, they get yarded, they get yanked in the air, and then they stall their wing through the lift band to top land. It's super sketchy, but
Fair enough. Yeah. I went there. I've gone there a few times, and every time I've, you know, kept the glider in the bag pretty much.
Was that with the north wind or the east wind?
Both, but I think that's also just lack of high wind experience. I'm still really new. So on the east side looks a lot more approachable.
Yeah, the east side's good. I haven't been there in a few years. It used to be a spot kind of to the north of the road there, where you kind of, like, you know, depending on the wind, you could get through the trees there and have a little sledder to that parking area down below. If it's actually, I've had a day there with Frank a long time ago where it was like blowing 19 knots east southeast, and we flew like 5 miles to the south and came back. Pretty cool.
Not there yet.
Go to Portugal, man. Go to Portugal. You can go and fly at this little place called Gralia. It's absolutely fabulous.
1 week out here.
I know I'm very interested in trying some new places, and I think if people are interested in, you know, carpooling and going further, you know, message me or just put it out on the list. I'm sure that it'll be, you know, safer with multiple people going together and using our collective brains for new areas. So that's my plug for that.
Yeah, Steve, sure. You know, I'm not around until April, but the place that I would keep on my radar at this time of the year, the only place I would really be looking at the weather would be Blanchard. And like I said, it's super easy to get to. Have you been there?
I have not.
I'll put you in touch with one of the local pilots there. He's retired, super awesome. He'll happily give you a site briefing and, you know, keep you safe. So I'll forward those details too.
Oh, fantastic.
But yeah, going up there with a group of people and meeting up with, you know, somebody like Roger would be, you know, really helpful for your progression. You know, flying new sites, the more sites you fly, the better the pilot you'll become, because you'll get a better understanding of the micrometeorology at all these different sites. When you fly Tiger all the time, and you know, you might get an understanding of, oh, okay, you know, I can go to the Kingdom, and, you know, I can go to the House Thermal, I can go to the North Ridge, I can do this and that. But, you know, that's only, you know, one hill. You know, you go to a hill that's, you know, orientated different to the wind, to the sun. You know, you get a completely different understanding of micrometeorology. So, you know, flying more sites will help your progression out a huge amount.
So what other questions do we have? Does anybody else have other questions? I mean, I again love to keep it going. So if there's more to talk about, but I also, yeah.
Well, I've got to bail out, but I really want to thank you, Steve, for having put this all together. You've managed to get 25 people in here, and we learned a huge amount from this. And I just thank you for setting it up. I think it was awesome.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to do it. Thanks so much. I'm so thrilled that everyone came. I'm very, very grateful to Andrey for saying yes, he would present and making it happen, and for Maddie for showing up and presenting with them. George, thanks for showing up. Thor, everybody, really appreciate collective effort. So let's keep doing things like this. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
And George, I'll need to hook up with you to get this recording posted.
Yeah, sounds good, Steve. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Maddie.
Cheers, guys. Have a good
Thank you.
one. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
You can hear me.